is Doug Wood.
Hi.
Hi. So we're going to be doing the interviewing. So here we go. So my first question, very basic, is why do you want to continue being an alderman for Monona?
Okay. So yeah, obviously I've been doing it a long time.
Yes.
And so obviously I like it, enjoy it. I've always had an interest in policy and politics, and I think I have a bit of a talent for it, and really it's a way to give back to the community and to feel like you've made a contribution to the future of the community and the present. So
yeah. So you said you always had an interest in the policies. What do you mean by that?
Public policy.
Yeah. Okay.
I was a political science major many years ago, and I've sort of maintained that interest in politics and working in different political campaigns, not besides my own, and I just think it's something really important. I think we've kind of learned it's very important for people to get involved in our political life, because if the good people don't, there are others who will take up their places.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for giving that insight. I did not know you had that background.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then my next question is, to be a part of a group with various opinions and experiences, how do you navigate through the different opinions and ensure it comes to a beneficial for the city?
Yeah. So, again, having been on the council for a long time, I've worked with a whole bunch of different alders of different political views and different personalities, and so let me back up a step.
Okay.
In my professional career, I was an attorney and administrative law judge for the state, and so in my job, basically my job was to sort of listen to one side, listen to the other side, try to determine what the facts were and apply the law to that in a fair way.
Yeah.
And so I think through that training, I've gotten pretty good at listening and listening to both sides, and listen, talking to my fellow alders. I don't find it, for the most part, very few people that I can't get along with at some point, and there have been a few that have been a challenge, but I mean, I think you have to approach it with respect for other people's viewpoints, and recognize that as much as you might believe in what you think is right, there are other people who have a very differing views that you may not agree with, but you have to respect those, and like I say, and listen. And sometimes we do hear, this is more from the public, not from my colleagues on the council, but if something doesn't turn out the way that they wanted, they think that you didn't listen to them, and that's really not the case. It's like, we did listen, we didn't agree, so we took a different course than what you might have wanted us to, but we were listening.
So you are receptive to ideas, but sometimes you have to use a level head and make sure that's best for the whole community and not a particular group.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the council's job to make policy decisions. You can only say maybe about things for so long, and often, you need, often it does come down to, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not going to do whatever it might be. You can say maybe and study it, but eventually
you wear it out.
Yeah, eventually you do have to make a decision. So.
Yeah, perfect. And then my next question is, as a community, we strive, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a question. For Monona, getting a new park called San Damiano Park.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you believe needs to happen with the park to ensure we utilize the land to the best ability?
Okay. So, yeah, I was actually involved in the negotiations
Okay.
with with the Catholic Church, essentially,
Yeah.
for the purchase of the property. And it had been one that a number of us in town had sort of had our eye on. If that ever becomes available, the city should buy it, or try to buy it, or try to preserve it for public use and not as more development along the lakefront. Because there really is very little, as you know, very little open space especially on Monona.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we've hired MSA to do a master planning process.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we're a third of the way or something through that. We've gathered public input. The MSA is developing some options.
Mm-hmm.
We're limited in what we can ultimately do with the land because we did accept a $2 million grant from Dane County.
Yes.
That basically requires that it not be developed. It can still be used as a park. So if we can identify a use or a structure or whatever programs that happen in a park in Dane County, then we could do it there. So that process is obviously still ongoing.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal preference is that we don't do a whole lot with it.
Yeah.
And I would kind of take a minimalist approach to it. I think that's what people love about it, is the natural setting and the incredible views of downtown and across the lake. Let's see. I think the house is obviously sort of the X factor. We don't know. I don't think there's certainly not a consensus on whether we should attempt to preserve it or get rid of it, and how expensive it would be to preserve it.
Yeah.
That's almost certainly anything that we do in a significant way with the house would need to be funded by private donations.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of benefit to preserving it. I chaired the Landmarks Commission a few years ago and had done some studying on the history of the Landmarks Commission in Madison, and was looking at old photos of these tremendous, gorgeous homes that aren't there anymore.
Wow.
And it's sort of, once they're gone, they're gone forever.
Yeah.
And and I think one of them they tore down to build a Burger King.
Wow.
So,
that?
So I guess my kind of inclination on that is, at least for the time being, we not do anything that would foreclose that preservation option, so that we maintain it, in such a way that the house, like, keep the heat on, which we are. That is not inexpensive. I would guess we're probably gonna spend somewhere $8,000 maybe just for the power, for the heat and electricity
Per
for
year?
it. Yeah. So it's not prohibitive, but it's also not free. And so, we, that will be, I think, a bit of a push to, like, at some point, a decision will need to be made.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily envision a whole lot of anything happening with that property other than right away, I should say, within the next couple of years. I think it'll, we need to work out the plans of just, as a community, kind of decide what we want to do.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was not aware of those details, so thank you so much for going over those details.
Sure.
I don't know, I'm very bad at keeping up with that, so I'm so glad that you and other aldermen and the mayor of candidacy have been updating me on that. It's
Okay.
really fun to learn different aspects
Right.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually, if I could go back kind of the first question, that's one of the things I really enjoy about being on the city council
Yeah.
is learning so much about so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
It's even for a city, small city the size of Monona, like we do pretty much everything that city of Madison does. Not everything, but most of it, just on a lot smaller scale.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. There's a lot there. Going back to San Damiano, the one thing I would encourage people to do is to look into the Friends of San Damiano.
Okay.
And if you're
There's a
inclined,
website, right?
they have a website.
Okay.
Yeah. They are actually funding through donations. They're paying for the master planning process. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly how much money they've raised right now, but they're doing pretty well. But yeah, I would encourage anybody to look into it and if you're inclined to join. It's not a membership, but there's donations.
Yeah.
I try to make a few very small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I'll definitely have to check that website out after this.
Right, Friends of San Damiano.
Yeah, thank you. And then the next question that I was originally asking is, as a community, we strive for diversity and equal opportunities. Given that Monona is predominantly white, what as a community, what can we do to be more inclusive and kind of opening of other cultures for people who may want to visit or live here?
Mm-hmm. So it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of changing the makeup of the demographics of the community, I think the city is limited in how we can impact that, because I think the cost of housing in Monona and in Dane County in general, but in Monona in particular, is really expensive. Whether you're renting or buying, and that's a significant barrier to anyone who's who's not middle class, above upper middle class even. It's not a whole lot of those homes come on the market, and when they do, they're snapped up, and it's incredible the appreciation of home values just in the last 3 or 4 years. So that's that's a barrier. I do think there are a few things we can do to make the community more inviting or more comfortable for other people from other cultures or other races other than white. I think we've actually made a tiny bit of progress on that. Looking at the census numbers, it seems like we're at about 2.5% of Asian, about 2.7, I think, of African American, and about the same of Hispanic. So it's a little bit more, but we have. You may be aware the city contracted with Nehemiah Center, which has been really good for city council and for staff training that we've gone through. We also were able to take an extensive Black History class. We had to do it online because they teach it in person on Monday nights, and so for the city council, obviously it's a 9-week course, I think. So that was, just to raise our awareness and sort of, make you more aware of unconscious biases that we all have. So that's helpful. I think those sort of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are important. We had a ad hoc committee that did a report that essentially recommended, then they made some recommendations of things the city could do. One of them was to establish an implementation committee, which the mayor appointed the members to that very recently.
Okay.
So that, it's ongoing. It's just not,
Oh, of
it's not the
course,
kind of
yeah.
thing that you're like, oh, well, yeah, we're done with that. Like, that's just not,
Yeah.
that, I also think though, some of the issues are really tied together, like
Yeah.
housing.
Mm-hmm.
We need more housing in Monona, in Dane County, that the population projected increase of about 170,000, I think, over the next, by 2050.
Oh,
There's almost 800,000 people will live in Dane County by 2050.
wow.
So we need a lot more housing, and we need
Yeah.
more workforce, affordable housing. There's one project that's in the works, but I'm not sure how close it is to being really brought forward.
Okay.
So there was another that had progressed through where the bowling alley is, had progressed up to a point, and then they kind of pulled back on that one. But that's so affordable housing, so that people who don't drive or can't drive,
Okay.
don't want to drive, can still either live here and go to work somewhere else,
Yeah.
or can live somewhere else and work here. And I think Metro Transit, the opportunity to go with them is really significant in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
It's much more service,
Mm-hmm.
7 days a week, more, a few more hours, certainly more routes. That would really make, big progress on that front.
Yeah, that would be a lot more access.
Right, yeah. And again, so that then the affordable or workforce housing that's sometimes called. Those are two important things that would lower barriers
Okay.
to come here. And we also need to make people, when they do come here, that everybody feels comfortable.
Of course.
And I think we've made big strides in that, symbolically as well as in reality. Hiring Brian Cheney as our police chief, African American gay man. He's probably one of the most visible community leaders,
Yeah.
right? And so that, I think, says something about the community. That's certainly not the reason he was hired.
No.
Because he's a very capable leader, and has already done some really good things with the department.
Mm-hmm.
But it's symbolically, I think, important.
Yeah. And then the next one I had was about, as a smaller community, some things we just can't do on our own without involving other communities. What ideas or strategies or even goals do you have for creating partnerships with other communities? And you already touched base on that regarding to the, what do you call
Nehemiah?
Yeah, Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me. So you're right. There are some things that are difficult. Wouldn't really make sense for us to try to do on our own.
Mm-hmm.
We do engage in a lot of shared work, if you will, with other communities through intergovernmental agreements.
Okay.
For stormwater. There's a stormwater program. There's mutual aid for police and fire,
Yeah.
so that if we need help from Madison or McFarland for police or fire call, medical, and we can't respond, they will come, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already there. Let's see. We have some good working relationship with the Monona Grove School District, especially on our Park and Rec program has a good working relationship with their staff.
Okay.
I'm also vice chair of the Greater Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO.
Okay.
That's a federally mandated organization that each urban area in the country has to have, and basically we oversee the expenditure of federal transportation dollars.
Okay.
Like we don't necessarily choose, like we don't go out and look for projects. Projects come to the board
Okay.
and generally get funded in that way. They're through the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill that Congress passed. There's a lot more money coming in, especially for like alternative transportation, whether it's bicycles or walking, or so I think we can take not more advantage, that we can use those. You know, if we have projects, we need to make sure and they fit, you know, that we're asking for it. And being on the board, I'm more aware of the opportunities and have tried to pass those on to our staff. And in fact, Nichols Road is going to be rebuilt in 2026 using federal funds for about 60% of the cost.
Oh, okay.
So, and hopefully make that, especially through Winnequa Park, a more pedestrian friendly, because there are a lot of pedestrians through there. There's a fair amount of traffic, but I think, you know, we could do some things, some traffic calming that's not intrusive, that would make it just more comfortable to walk through there and to cross the street. And, let's see. Yeah, I mean, that's, so we do engage in a fair amount of those sort of intergovernmental work already.
Yeah.
So, and then our staff just naturally, you know, are involved in their state organizations and get a lot of ideas and share ideas through that, in that way. So, yeah.
And then I'm gonna go on to regarding to Monona development. So is Monona in danger of is Monona in danger of neglecting any areas of town? Like, you know, like, is there any areas that you think needs more attention, or?
I don't think so. I mean, I actually looked it up. We're 3.35 square miles, so we're not very big. One of the it's not unique, but the way the council is organized, all of our seats are at large. So each of the 6 of us represent the entire community. Instead of having it by districts, which would be another way to do it. So, you know, I think I guess the point in relation to the question is that, you know, we're sort of all should be aware of the entire community.
Yeah.
I know. I think probably the neighborhoods east of Femright Drive maybe get a little less attention. They're, although I don't know that you know, certainly not intentional, and I don't think they're really lacking from the they haven't been harmed, I guess.
No.
So no, I don't think so. Sometimes it might look that way, like the old Southtown Mall. It's this. I've learned over the years that some of these things just take a long time to happen, and in some ways those sort of long-term efforts are the best way, to me, the most rewarding kind of things. About 15 years ago or more, I had sort of picked up the idea that we really needed to rehabilitate our playgrounds and our neighborhood parks, which we have 22, I think, parks. And sort of started putting money in the capital budget each year for playground equipment at a park, which is is 60,000 or more easily now for like the playground equipment has gotten more elaborate. It's cooler, it's more fun, and but so we've invested in that. Bridge Park is a shining example, I think.
Yeah.
We don't really have a neighborhood park like farther east or south from Bridge, so that that sort of Ford Sylvan neighborhood down there. They don't have a neighborhood park as close as you might like. But it's fully developed, so short of buying some property from that's probably not going to happen, but
yeah, the reason I mentioned it was I'm actually impressed with how the Grand Crossing area is, because Chase was there, and to redevelop it to the way it is, I'm very impressed. And so I was wondering from that experience, if you guys are like, oh, we have to be more proactive so that doesn't happen in other areas.
Good question. So the key there really was, and this really started mostly when Bob Miller was still mayor.
Yes.
We went out and effectively acquired all of those properties.
Okay.
We did it through LLCs, not in the city of Monona's name, but so that unity of ownership for that land was really important in attracting a developer. It was a really tough site for development because there were a whole lot of costs.
Yeah.
Like you had to get rid of the Chase Bank, and you had to get rid of the old dry cleaner and all that stuff. We did a little bit of that, and we did buy a couple of parcels on North Monona Drive, sort of with that idea in mind that if we could do the same thing there, we might be able to promote some development. Let's see. So there is a proposed development at the corner of Dean and Monona Drive. That's actually doesn't include any city-owned property. Well, I'm trying to picture it in my head as I say that, but that was Grand Crossing was a long, difficult project, but wow, it's exceeded all expectations.
Yeah, worth the wait.
Right, yeah. A lot of people did a lot of work. Mayor O'Connor picked up after Bob left, and she was really the one that kind of brought it home.
Okay.
Tom Stoper with the CDA chair, and the developer who's a local resident.
Yeah.
So that's most things have been city government that are worth doing. That it's not just one person doing it.
No, that would be very overwhelming if it was.
Right. Yeah. takes teamwork. Yeah.
And then another question I had was to kind of touch base on this is housing. So obviously housing is an issue nationwide and in Dane County, apparently with the progress of population within the coming years. Do you believe it's necessary to develop more condos and apartments in Monona?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. As I was saying before, the population is projected. It's already grown. I think it grew about 130,000 from the year 2000 to the year 2020. And it's projected to add another, I think, about 178,000 by 2050. So the population of the county over it'll be 50-year span, but it will have basically doubled.
Yeah.
I remember when I first moved to Madison, granted it was 1989, so it was a long time ago. No, 1979, what am I saying? Even longer ago. I think the population of Madison was like 170,000, and the whole entire Dane County was less than 300,000.
Wow.
So it's, anyway, the point is, it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
And lots of people want to live here. It's become cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So and a big part of that is there's not enough housing to keep up with the increasing demand, let alone, we need more housing. The vacancy rates in apartments are just minuscule. There's always going to be a little bit of vacancy just in the turnover process.
Yeah.
But there's just not, and that's why they can get the rents that they can, and the homeowners when they sell can get the prices that they can. So yes, and whether it's market rate or affordable, we need both.
Yeah.
We actually have they call it the Bloom Project, sometimes the Neutral Project. That's the one at the corner of Dean and Monona Drive.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
The developers agreement for that's coming to the council on Monday.
Oh.
So
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, those are, we do through the CDA and through the TIF, the Tax and Criminal Financing process. Very often those projects won't happen without a TIF loan. They are loans. They're still a good deal for the it helps get the projects financed.
Yeah.
So it definitely benefits the developers, and no question about that. But the idea is that doing that will increase the value of the property so much that the increased property taxes will pay back the loan. And we have 27 years under the state law for those loans to be paid back, essentially. We've had a number of the TIF projects that are paying back in 8 to 10 to 12 years, so paying back really quickly.
Aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, the super successful, there's a TIF district where both of the medical clinics, Meriter and UW, was tremendously successful. The nice thing is when you have successful TIFs like that, now if you have another TIF that maybe isn't as financially successful, the successful TIF can loan money to the other one.
Like use the equity?
Yeah, or you use the income, the property tax revenue to pay back loans from the other district. One example of that was, I don't know if you remember the Garden Circle neighborhood right off of Owen Road. It's where the senior housing is now.
Yes.
And that was a very problematic area. There was quite a bit of crime and a lot of drug use, and the way it was set up was not very visible from Owen Road. So there was a time Rob Call was mayor when those properties, they had separate owners, but they became available. They were going to go on, they were shut down for a while, but they were going to go on the market. And so the city said, we're not going to just let that happen again. So we bought all of them, which put us in about a $6 million hole, because that was a little bit riskier than a lot of the actions, because we didn't really have okay, if we buy this, we have a good idea of what's going to happen here. It was a social, almost a social benefit was the main goal there, rather than a financial return on the investment. And which I think has worked out very well with the senior housing there. I mean, Monona, I think still is one of the oldest, if not the oldest community, age demographic age-wise
okay,
in the
yeah.
county.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And then, my next one is, if you could add a new business to Monona, what would it be, and where would you like to locate it?
Okay, so my answer is a bookstore.
Oh,
But, that's never gonna happen because,
yeah. Yeah, we have a library.
well, we have a library and bookstore, physical bookstores, it's, anyway, I would love to have a library, or a book, we do have a library. I would love to have a bookstore. But yeah, I mean, development doesn't really work that way for the most part. Like, we don't go out and say, well, we want this.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of asking as
Right.
more of a fun idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have, like, we pushed, like, for restaurants, for example, to be included in the Grand Crossing development.
Okay.
And that was obviously very successful.
Yeah.
We got 3 are in there, if you count the coffee shop. Yeah. So,
A bookstore it is.
bookstore, yes.
I'm sorry.
I thought you had skipped a question. I don't know if you did that on purpose or not. but
No, I.
Emergency and municipal service, number 9.
Oh, yep, I'm on that one, I believe. Yeah, I was gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I have it. I probably gave it to you in a different order than I have it written down.
Okay.
I apologize.
Then I'll let you run the interview. How's that?
So the next one was gonna be, as an alderman, you may spend many hours, as you know, researching, developing, and finalizing plans. How do you plan to do that or continue with your personal and professional life?
Right. So I'm retired now,
Okay.
so it's obviously this doesn't present as big a challenge. I mean, you still have to be aware of, like, when you schedule non-city council events, you always have that in mind. It does take a lot of time. I think for me personally, having done it as long as I have, I don't have to spend as much time. I'm a lot more efficient at it. But I mean, for any new alder coming on, I always tell them it's the budget. Bill Clinton said it's the economy, stupid. Well, it's the budget, stupid. It's just like, if you want something, if you want a policy, you want a program, I mean, we can adopt policies that don't have money attached to them, we do. But for the most part, if you want something to happen, it has to, it needs to be either in the operating budget or the capital budget.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think requires a lot of time, study, meeting with department heads. I mean, I find that is probably the most valuable way to find out what's going on and what they need in their budgets and in their policies, is to sit down and meet with the department heads, and I make an effort to do that. I did that, in fact, when we started the Nehemiah process. I reached out to all the staff because I knew they were going to be part of it, and just was curious to see, like, what did they think about, racial equity and our efforts to deal with it. And I would not have been able probably to do that if I wasn't retired, because
I can see that.
But you manage it. I mean, you're kind of looking back, like, how did I manage it? But we're pretty efficient now on the city council. The council meetings don't go on and on and on. Like, there have been times when it was that way because the council members were more contentious than now. We have a pretty good group again. People that get along pretty well. Don't always agree on everything by any means, which I would hope you wouldn't want that.
No.
or sort of what's the point of being here if we're all just agree on everything. It's a balance. I mean, it's a sacrifice. I don't want to overemphasize overdo that part, because I think it is important that we do get, new people involved, and which we will this time. There'll be at least one new, if not two. And I know it's particularly a challenge if you have young kids, but any kids of any age still living there. It's another thing you have to balance and make it work, but it's definitely very doable. So one thing that's really nice though about being an alder as compared to being mayor is it's not necessarily a 365 day a year job.
No.
And you can sort of pick the things that you're especially passionate about, or you think are really important, or you're interested in, or know something about. Pick your spots, and then really, work on those things to get a particular program or structure or whatever accomplished. And that to me is, I get a lot more satisfaction out of that kind of focused work. And I don't have to worry about, the entire city government every day. So you can, you can kind of pick and choose a little bit. I mean, obviously within within limits of doing your work. We all serve on, I think probably 4 or 5 city committees as well as the council meetings. So, but it's doable.
Yeah. And then the next question is, as Monona keeps growing, there becomes more need of services and coverage from the emergency services. What would you like to do with the emergency services?
Well, I think right now the biggest need is we need a new facility for them.
Okay.
The current public safety departments, the building that they're in is really old and outdated.
Okay.
I mean, there's sort of different ages to different parts of that building. I think it's was built at least, for sure, at 2 different times, if not 3.
Okay.
The police department, they have woefully inadequate space. That's, I won't say it's unsafe, but it could be safer in terms of keeping work areas separate from the interview areas. They do hold people there sometimes. Sometimes they're just interviewed, sometimes they're being held until they can be transported downtown to the jail. And just, right now, their break room is also their work area.
Oh.
Which, that's not good.
No.
So I would encourage people to there's a video tour online, or you can they would be more than happy, either the fire department or the police department, to literally just drop in, and that's what Chief Cheney has said, we'll find somebody to take you around so that you can see firsthand the need. Beyond that, there's just there's always equipment needs, and I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to make sure that both the fire, EMTs, and police have the equipment they need. I know there's some things that have fallen behind over the years. I'm thinking in particular the shields that they use if you have a SWAT type situation. The ones we have are I picked them up, and they must, I can't remember, 35 pounds, 40 pounds or something. And it's supposed to be something that, if you're in that tactical situation, you're holding for a long time.
Wow.
So I think that's in the capital budget this year to replace those. But, I don't know that, I think both police, fire, EMTs, they do a great job. We've progressed. We did not used to have paramedics in Monona. I think a lot of people would have been really surprised. We had the sort of level 2, there's like 3 different levels of EMTs.
Oh, okay.
Paramedic is at the top of, there's different levels, I think there's sub grades within that, or specialties within that too, and we do have, it's a full paramedic staff, so it's just like you would get the same medical care from our people that you would get from the city of Madison.
Okay.
And that did not used to be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good, but it just didn't have the level of training. There were some things they couldn't administer that you can as a paramedic. So that's been a big change. I'm not sure that the way that we deliver fire services in Wisconsin makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
For each little community to buy their own fire equipment, I don't know. It's sort of one of those things where I look at it and say, this doesn't really seem very rational, but I don't know how you'd ever change it to go to a fire district kind of approach.
Okay.
Would be challenging, and then you've got localities not wanting to give up control over their own department. But those fire trucks are even a basic fire truck now really expensive. I mean, $700,000-800,000.
Wow.
And you just kind of wonder if we have too much capacity. If you put the entire county together and looked at it, like, do we have excess capacity? I don't know. This doesn't seem like it's to having all these many local jurisdictions deciding what fire equipment to purchase.
Yeah, interesting.
But that's sort of the system that we have.
Yeah.
Those guys and gals, men and women, do a great job. I think can be proud of the progress we've made in our gender equity, in particular in the fire department, and I know they're making an effort, likewise, in the police department and across the board, but those are, I think, particularly important to have diverse representation because they deal with everybody.
Yeah.
And if you have to deal with, and often, and not like it's probably somebody's worst day.
Yeah.
That's why they're interacting with the police or the fire or emergency medical, and I think it really makes a big difference if when they arrive, it's somebody that looks like you.
Yeah.
Or is so that's about what we need to build a new public safety building.
Okay.
That'll probably be a referendum question a year from now.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be super expensive.
Yeah.
Like eye-wateringly expensive, but
it's necessary.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for going into that. I was not aware about the state of Wisconsin, like logistics for each community being responsible
Right.
for their own.
There are some fire districts in the state where they have joined together like that.
Like a district?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's more in rural areas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my favorite and last question to ask is, what is your favorite part or aspect of Monona?
Wow, it's really hard to choose because there's a lot. I would have to say the library is right near the top of the list.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do literally live across the street
Yes.
from the library, but I loved it before that. And I don't know how, I assume people are aware, but maybe they're not if they're not library users, that if you have a library card, you can go in and search and if you can find a book in the entire South Central system, and you know this,
Yes.
that you can get it from Wisconsin Rapids. If
I
they have a
know.
book that we don't have, or,
Mhm.
it's like incredible. I love Winnequa Park. I always, I walk my dogs there pretty much every day. Just different aspects of. I like watching the seasons change there. Some of the wildlife, the birds at least that come in, not necessarily the geese, but the herons and there's actually a red-tailed hawk that kind of has taken up this area as his neighborhood. You often see him perched up on the radio tower at City Hall, especially in the summer. Well, the view at San Damiano is sublime, I think is a fair word to use. And that's kind of a funny thing. I think for years we all kind of drove past that property and looked at the house and the grounds and thought, wow, that's really cool. We didn't know. The best part was to get on the property and go behind the house and see the lake and have the access to the water. I think I wrote down. It'd be remiss to not mention Woodland Park and Alva Leopold, which kind of all works together. I, along with John Traver and actually Mark Miller, who, before he was a state senator, were among a group of people that worked for the city to acquire that property when it was going to be developed. I mean, there actually was a development plan for Woodland Park.
Oh, okay.
And the Travers have just spent an enormous amount of time in there. If you looked at what it looked like when they started, when we first bought it, and it was this kind of a tangled, looked like, it did look, it was wooded. It was this really a tangled mess with a lot of, buckthorn and all sorts of invasive trees and plants. And we hired an expert on sort of rehabilitation of natural spaces, came up with a plan of here's what you've got, here's what you can get rid of and where to focus your efforts, and been working on it for nearly 20 years, I think now, 15 at least, and but the amount of time, the sweat equity that John and Peggy Traver in particular put into that, it's just amazing. As well as they've made some donations too, but so that's one of my favorite spots.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, if someone wanted to learn more about you or like your ideas, what would be the best way for them to learn more about you or contact you?
So the best way is through my city email.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that'll be on the website, the Monona website?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I do have a private email, which is dougwood1975 at gmail.com. I have a Facebook page. I'm not planning to use it for the campaign this time. I don't have a personal website, so I have, and maybe it's foolish, but I have a sort of philosophical problem with social media and the impact it's had on our politics. I mean, I understand there are benefits to it. So I am torn a little bit on it, but I don't know. I did it last time. I'm not sure how effective it was, how beneficial, or how beneficial it was to people. I don't know. I mean, there's still a couple months to the election, I guess. I could reconsider that, but right now, email at City Hall.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you.
I really appreciated it. I learned so much, which I love. I love learning. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this. It's awesome. It's really cool.